Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to SERPA. Today I wanted to go over disaster readiness levels or emergency readiness levels. Now, the design of this video is going to be very straightforward. My goal is to continue standardizing a lot of the focused features we're going to be having in this channel and with preparedness as well as disaster response. The better I can standardize these systems, the more effective our response will be and the better organized we'll be as a group. So I wanted to go in the different types, how I'm going to be creating that, and how we are going to go about standardizing this. Now, this is going to be a system that is rated 1 through 5, 1 being the least dangerous and 5 being the most dangerous. So we're going to go through these details. Now, I did want to note that this is going to be a hybrid video, meaning this is going to apply to our inbound. If you weren't here for the last video, that is going to be for our homestead, our apartment, wherever we are residing. And it's going to apply to our outbound, the destination that we're going to, or the route to the destination. Both of those are going to be included here. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to talk about each of the levels. Let's go ahead and start with readiness level 1. Now, I've caught some flack explaining this to people and sending the script out for this video. Readiness level 1 is going to be no threat. Now, I want this to be included in here because it is our goal to train y'all and to make sure and ensure that we have a developed system that is based on readiness. Now, the reason I'm saying that is you have to be able to establish what is normal and abnormal in order to properly develop your readiness levels. An example that I can provide to you guys, and it's a real world example, is one day we were sitting at a friend's house and a bunch of billowing smoke came down the road. Now, we were trying to decide whether or not that was normal. It was a lot of smoke, and the person who had lived there for several years at this point was unable to tell us if that was something that happened regularly. And as a result, we investigated what ended up being just somebody having a fire in the backyard. If you're not willing to realize that people are doing that and that happens in your neighborhood, then you are not taking the proper precautions. You're not identifying or paying attention enough to be able to identify what would be and what is regular. Now, in that case, since him living there and paying attention to that, people have fires all the time. But in that moment, we weren't sure if that was something that we were going to see or have seen often. We have to pay attention to these little things. That's what's going to give us that higher entry readiness level. That's what's going to be one of the big identifiers that helps us be better prepared than others. Now, other examples that we can think of are the cars in your neighborhood there regularly? Are there unusual vehicles in the area? Is there unusual activity? What would be unusual activity? Are there often kids playing out in the yard, or is that something new that you need to pay attention to? These kinds of things go a long way. Now, I want to explain this in an outbound format, and I want to mention it here because this is going to be a hybrid video, is that this is going to apply not just at home, but anywhere. Now, when you're traveling to work, you should pay attention to what things you see along the route. What is the normal level of traffic? Is it normal to see 3 or 4 police officers on their way to work, or is that something that's unusual? At your place of work, are all of the people who are supposed to be there, are they there? Or are people missing that shouldn't be missing? Is that worth checking in on? These kinds of things are what builds your reputation in this kind of an industry and with your local group and community. Be that guy, be that higher level expectation, meet those standards. So that's going to be the first readiness level. We are trying to establish what is normal and that it is normal. And if we can do that properly, that's going to give us a little bit of an edge. So let's go ahead, let's talk about readiness level 2. Now, readiness level 2 is going to be kind of your entry phase level. This is going to be a heightened awareness after something unusual has taken place. This is going to require some sort of investigation or a change to your daily routine. An example of this, you come home, all the lights are off and they're not turning on, your power's out. This is going to immediately put you into a heightened level of readiness, right? Something unusual has occurred. We need to figure out what and why. And if that's something that happens often, do we have a backup for it? Are we prepared for that? Part of this video is explaining that we're going to be covering these topics individually in all of the scenarios. That's what our channel is going to be doing, helping you guys be prepared for the inbound stuff and how to assist in the outbound stuff. So as a concept, this is just that heightened awareness. A good way to think about this before I bring up examples is that one police officer or one cruiser can help identify the issue or solve the issue entirely. Keep that in mind. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some examples. Car thefts is a really good example. If a car is stolen within about 1 to 2 miles, that's worth paying attention to. That could be or could lead to something in your neighborhood. If somebody has been causing property damage at night or stealing things from your neighborhood, Amazon packages or just mail, these things you need to consider. It's worth staying up just a little bit later around the time that these events may have occurred or waking up earlier to spot or see if you spot somebody doing these kinds of things. It's just a little bit more readiness and it's just a heightened level of readiness that isn't necessarily over the top. And we have to include it in here because we're going to be covering how to be ready for nothing all the way up to ready for the absolute worst. So On an inbound level, you have to pay attention to this. On an outbound level, if there are a bunch of police cars that you see pulling people over, they're likely not just doing that to hand out tickets. They're probably looking for somebody, something like a vehicle, or just something in general. There is a good chance that they're doing that for a reason. That should automatically give you kind of a heightened awareness level. Something is unusual. We haven't been told what yet, but I should be paying attention to it, and I should be notifying those around me that I've noticed that. Going into work, seeing somebody's missing that shouldn't be. Everyone is sick at once. These kinds of things you want to pay attention to. So even on an outbound level, you have to consider these things. Another good example I like to bring up is an Amber Alert. Amber Alerts are the local PD is literally telling everybody there's an issue that is a little bit bigger than an individual, and we all need to work together to solve it. That is going to be your entry level. That's going to be where that readiness level 2 comes into place. So please understand where I'm coming from on that. And with that being concluded, let's go ahead and let's talk about readiness level 3. Readiness level 3 is an increased threat. In our last readiness level, we spoke about one police officer being able to handle the situation. Now making the jump to 3, the entire department would be required to handle this emergency. Now, examples of these emergencies are going to be your hurricanes, your tornadoes, your earthquakes, your minor floods, and all of these being a minor storm at the end of the day. I know a hurricane is a big word, but if you've been hit by a Category 1 hurricane, they typically aren't the end of the world. They are an inconvenience, and they require everybody to respond to them, but that is something that can be handled on a local level, on a very local regional level. Same thing with smaller tornadoes, minor earthquakes, and minor floods. Even a police SWAT event is something that you should go to that increased level 3 threat level. It is something you have to consider. With these level 3s, like I said, it'll probably be a local level from our group and the community to get these things handled and taken care of. However, understand that it could be a little worse than that, and the local group, right, that's where we step in to assist. So understand that's where we're coming from here. On an outbound level, this is the first consideration where you're going to have to think, is it worth me going to work today? Or is this worth being stuck in traffic over and getting caught in this storm? How can I lower my readiness level? And with each readiness level, you should be considering that, right? Our ultimate goal here is to lower our readiness level down to 1 at all times. Even in readiness level 2, we're staying up and being a little bit more vigilant so we can try to bring that readiness level down as soon as possible. For readiness level 3, we're doing the same thing. How can we make cleanup go faster? How can we be more efficient? How can we be more productive to make sure that this gets solved as quick as possible? And this is going to require, like I said, a whole department, your whole fire department, your whole police department. It is going to require all your local assets. At that point, we're pretty involved and volunteer work is encouraged. So let's take advantage of that. Let's be there for that. So that's where I'm coming from on this one. And now at this point, I want you guys to consider just a couple of examples that I've run into. That local flooding in Richmond Hill that came through here definitely required the full local response, and they were pretty overwhelmed at that point. It wasn't a state of emergency, but it was an emergency for the city and the surrounding boroughs and districts. So with that being said, they didn't have the proper tools, the proper manpower, or the proper resources or organization to be able to handle that effectively. That's where volunteer groups like us stepped in. That's what I'm talking about for these readiness levels. So let's go ahead, we're going to jump into readiness level 4. Readiness level 4 is a priority level. These are going to be your life-altering storms and your life-altering situations. Things like this can be riots. If you guys remember the George Floyd riots, that's going to be a level 4. People are actively burning down buildings, they are damaging property, and they are assaulting other people. That is a considerable level 4 response and a level 4 priority level. Other storms that are like this, your Cat 3, 4, and 5 hurricanes, these are going to be your level 4s. Major damage to infrastructure, a casualty count, and on top of that, overwhelming damage. It's not going to be handled on your local level. You are in a state of emergency and it's going to be declared as such. That should be the automatic indicator to you in your mind that you are going to be in a readiness level 4. So understand that. A couple of examples that I can think of and a couple of references I'd like you guys to look at if you have the time. Wendigoon did a really good video on Helene. I'm going to talk about it. We got sideswiped by Helene, just a little scrape of the severe portion of it. We didn't get the center of it. We were just on the outskirts of what would be considered severe. Going into North Carolina, they had some of the worst of it, and it came in the form of rain. Wendigoon does a great video going out there and explaining the damage was so significant that the federal and state levels had no idea how to handle it, and all of the orders obviously got jumbled and messed up as they typically do in those situations. So it relied on volunteer forces that could cut through the red tape and the waiting and the orders and the organization to go in there and handle that. And for the first week, that's really all it was individuals like you or like me that were involved in the cleanup of this situation. Now, another example I can think of is the major flood in Texas, the flash flood in Texas, the one that affected Camp Mystic, where those 27 young girls died and an additional 80 other people died. Over 100 people died in that flash flood in the United States, which is extremely unusual. And small organizations and small veteran-run groups went out there and actually were the first on scene. It takes time for state levels and local levels to get everybody to report in, to get everybody on the same page, to get everybody to get to the same area, and to make sure the tools and equipment are there. When it comes to us, we have all these things on us. We don't need to check in with anybody. We get there, we drop a pin, and we get organized. We're cutting most of our red tape. So that's why I want to get involved in this, and that's where I hope you want to get involved in this, or at the very least, stick around so that we can talk about how to be ready for these level 4s, these level 3s, these level 2s. So understand that this applies inbound at your home. We can talk about in a future video how to better harden your home and how to handle each scenario, whether it be a hurricane, a tornado, maybe even the riot, and talk about how to better prepare yourself, your home, and your family for these situations. So with that being said, outbound. At a level 4, you don't want to be there when it initially happens. After the storm has gone through and the level 4 remains in place, that is when it's best to start moving back. You do not want to get caught in these floods surprised in your vehicle. You don't want to be camping in these areas. If there's a level 4 and we need that communicated, don't be there when that happens. And even if you're at home and you're inbound, you may want to consider at this point, is it worth leaving and going outbound where I know there's going to be a readiness level 1 or 2, and that would be safer than staying here for a readiness level 4. And obviously, if you have nowhere to go and you can't lower that readiness level or you don't want to, we'll talk about how to prepare for it, like I said. So understand that. Now, we're going to talk about the last readiness level. It's readiness level 5. It's the maximum threat you're going to receive. The easiest way to put this one is shit has hit the fan. Any readiness level 5 situation that you're in is always going to be temporary. There is no way to get a readiness level 5 to be sustained just because of the severity of it. Now, I am talking, these are going to be your active shooters. This is going to be the riot is at the door. This is when the tornado makes contact with your home. You are in your 10-second survival mode. The decisions and the things you say over these 10 to 15 seconds are going to determine whether or not you have to worry about readiness ever again. So this is your maximum, oh my gosh, it's over kind of situation. What do I need to do? You are not going to be posting a level 5. If you're in a level 5 and you're able to post about being in a level 5, you're not a level 5. And after a level 5 event happens, you're going to find yourself in a 4 or a 3 or a 2. Now, the reason I'm saying that is if it's an active shooter situation, you're going to be running into the problem where either the threat gets solved or the threat doesn't get solved. Right? Simple as that. You solved it or it's not your problem anymore. Now, the reason I'm saying that it's going to lower your readiness level is if it's solved, you probably haven't caused a hurricane worth of damage dealing with that individual or dealing with that event. You have probably caused a single problem that one local officer or maybe a threat level 3 is going to come in and handle. It's not worth posting and a whole group coming to be active at your side. That could be different if a tornado comes and barrels through your home. Depending on the severity of it, you may be in a readiness level 3 or 4 situation. It's the same thing with flooding and hurricanes. We need to be able to distinguish that, and you need to be reliable and factual when we're talking about this stuff. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that before we move on to our final notes here. When you guys are reporting this information, or when it's coming down from me, I expect 2 sources. And why I want 2 sources is I want to make sure that it is understood and we are responding effectively, correctly, and the standard is being upheld. We do not want to respond with a level 3 situation when in reality it's a level 4. We're not going to provide or give the proper time, the proper tools, or the proper logistical constraint that is going to come with the 2 different emergencies that are coming out of that. A level 3 situation is probably a 2 or a 3 day cleanup where the assistance can then be handled by the local level. A level 4 could be weeks. It could be a long time before things return back to normal. And we need to know the differences, and it changes everything. You have to make sure that you're accurate. I'm going to expect a local news source, a national news source, and I can include y'all as a news source. If you're on site and you're the best live report on it, post it up. You can post videos and photos on our Discord. If you are showing me the level of damage where I can say, oh my gosh, we are in a level 3 or a level 4, that will only help me more properly prepare everybody and make sure that the proper logistics and channels have been notified. And that helps us help you, and that helps you help your community. That's our goal, right? So let's go ahead and get to the final notes here. This system is still developing and we want to refine it. I really encourage you guys to leave comments on scenarios that you may have thought of that might push this boundary a little bit so that I can fold them or put them into their proper places within this system. We are rating everything from a 1 to a 5, and 1 might be a 1.1 or a 4.2. We want to be able to at least categorize them into an area. And that's what we're going to be doing with this. And there's going to be some refinement that's going to be needed. I have so much time in the day, can only have so many thoughts. There may be a scenario that you thought of that may fall into an unusual category that we may need to discuss further. Please bring it up so I can make sure that it is greatly detailed and that this system works well. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. Please subscribe. It does help me understand that people are interested in this content and that I should be working to continue to do this. Along with that, please join the Discord. I'm going to link it in the description. Expect edits and changes to that Discord. As it grows, I'm going to put a little more time into it and refine it a little further each time. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in. Please have an immaculate rest of your day, evening, weekend, or week. Thank you all.